gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's April 26, 2022. I'm Gary Furman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined as always by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day, presented as always by LifeWallet, where the time is now to take charge of your personal health. And Matt, a little bit of a different day today. I thought we'd take the opportunity to take a little deeper dive maybe into the process that the coaches go through in terms of evaluations and managing recruiting. And obviously, Miami begins every recruiting cycle with the notion that it wants to keep the top local prospects home. But what do you do when there's a lot of local prospects at one position, like there is in this cycle at wide receiver, and how do you keep them all home? And so we begin today with a story on the website on Nathaniel Joseph from Miami Edison High School. He's a very gifted receiver. We'll take a look at him in a minute. But he was an early commitment to Clemson because the old staff at Miami wasn't, for some reason, recruiting him very hard. And, you know, when we turn on the tape, like we will in a minute, you're going to take a look at it and you're going to say, how in the world did that coaching staff not go all in on Nathaniel Joseph? How in the world did they let him commit to Clemson? The story today talks a little bit about that. It talks about his commitment to Clemson. It talks about the fact that Clemson, in trying to keep him locked in, is trying to forbid him from talking to Miami and other schools, which his high school coach, Luther Campbell, is not allowing. He's saying, of course, he is going to talk to other schools. And the whole thing is an interesting drama, Matt, that is encapsulated in our story on the website today. So let's start with your thoughts on that and the overall recruitment taking place with Nathaniel Joseph.
Well, you know, I don't want to talk too much about what's going on with Nathaniel Joseph and Clemson because I have talked with Nathaniel about it. More accurately, I've texted with Nathaniel Joseph about it because that's the way recruits communicate sometimes. And he really doesn't want, like, we know when he's visited Miami and who he's gone with and what he's done. And he just doesn't really want it out there. If he's gone to Miami a lot, hasn't gone to Miami a lot.
He's nervous.
Yeah, he's nervous, and he shouldn't be, because the bottom line, and I would tell this to my son, not just to Nathaniel Joseph, the bottom line is, if you're committed to a program, I understand what commitment means, and I know fans have a hard time getting their heads around these kids or whatever you want to call them, student athletes. People hate it when we say kids. These student athletes are committing. Well, that's it. They should shut down their process. But a lot of times for a young student athlete, you sort of have a leader and you want a spot in that class because, like we're going to talk about, there's so many receivers in South Florida. Well, there's only probably going to be 3 or 4 receivers in this class, right? And they may not all be from South Florida. And there's 6 really top wide receivers that I know of in South Florida that I think everybody around the country wants. So you lock in your spot. And at the same time, you have to remember, these colleges drop kids when they have bad senior years. So why can't a student athlete continue to look around just in case, if you want to call it that, whatever. It's a two-way street. There's nothing binding about it. Clemson tells Nathaniel Joseph, you're committed. You can't take any other visits. You're done. He's allowed to take visits with his team. If the whole team's going, it's a team activity. Of course you go. It's a prerequisite as being part of a team or being part of a 7-on-7 team. So he's gone in those situations as well. He grew up a huge Miami fan. He wanted to be a Hurricane, and they didn't recruit him. And now the new staff's after him hard. And I personally think he'll be a Miami Hurricane, but God forbid Clemson watches this video and hears that and they freak out. But what I would tell Nathaniel Joseph, like I was saying, I'd tell my son this, if they really want you at Clemson, I think you're that good, they're going to take you whether you take your visits or not.
Of course.
You take your 5 officials, they can say, we didn't want you to take them. They could freak out, whatever. You say, listen, I've just got to do this. This is my future, man. You know, everyone's telling me, my parents want me to take the visits. I've got to take the visits. I'm sorry. If he's good enough, they're not going to drop him. If he's a guy that's 8th on their board and they think they get 3, 4 other guys that they have ahead of him, I'm not sure you want to go to that program anyway, because they don't view you highly enough to where you're coming in, where you're going to be a top dog. You have to really get above a bunch of other guys. It makes no sense to me why anybody, any recruit, would listen to a school that says you can't take any more visits, because if you're good enough, they want you no matter what. It's recruiting, it's business. At the end of the day, the coaches want to fulfill their multi-million-dollar contracts and have the best team on the field. And just because somebody took some visits, they're not going to drop somebody who's going to help them win games and fulfill the obligations of their multi-million-dollar contracts to their school. It's ridiculous.
All right, so we have the story on Nathaniel Joseph today. We talked to Luther Campbell about all of this, and it's a really interesting story. I encourage everybody to read it. But in addition to that, I wanted to take a few moments on today's show to kind of talk a little bit about the process that coaches have to go through. And of course, with Mario Cristobal coming into the fold here at Miami, there is the assumption that everything's going to be fixed in South Florida. Mario's going to keep all the local kids home. Miami's not going to lose local kids anymore. And if Miami is losing local kids, it's a colossal failure. Okay. And, we've seen some of the, national guys at Rivals talking about this and the whole thing. And they're creating this perception that Mario Cristobal is failing if he doesn't get all these local kids. And, quite frankly, you got to look a little deeper, because let's take a look at the receiver position this year in recruiting. Matt, to our eye, there's about 6 elite wide receivers in South Florida this year. You've got, Jaylen Brown, Brandon Inniss, Hakeem Williams, Robbie Washington, Nathaniel Joseph, who we just mentioned, who's committed to Clemson, and Santana Fleming. Okay. Who is, listen, in fairness, might be on the border.
Don't forget Lamar. I know Lamar Seymour is not like maybe that highly touted. You didn't say him though, right? But he is committed.
He's committed. I don't know that he's going to make.
Right, but you have to mention him. I mean, he's a receiver in South Florida.
All right, Lamar Seymour is committed to Miami. Probably not as highly regarded as the 6 I mentioned, but the old staff did take an early commitment from him. His brother is on the team. We'll see what happens here as recruiting goes forward. Okay, I'll leave it at that, because I do think Miami's going to get a few of these kids that are, you can even go further to Gene at Northwestern also, Matt, who's a former commit. If you want to make the list 7, I mean, he's certainly a pretty darn good player as well, and we need to include him because he does have a great chance of coming back into the fold with Miami. So now you have these 7 kids that the coaching staff is having to sit here and measure against each other with the prospects that they can get them. And I put some tape together of Joseph, Inniss, and Washington, just as an example, because I think they're a good comparison. They're all kind of like slot type receivers. Washington looks to me like he could be an outside too. But and I just wanted to play it and talk a little bit about it as we play it, just to show people how difficult of a process this is. So we're starting here with Nathaniel Joseph, and watch how quick he is off the cuts, how he outruns everybody that tries to stay with him on the field. I mean, how the old coaching staff didn't recruit this kid is absolutely beyond me. I love the way he gets off the line of scrimmage. He's very quick with his first step, and you can just see like this kid has elite written all over him. I mean, look at the speed of his cuts. I mean, phenomenal prospect, right? So you're sitting there saying, oh, geez, we got to have Nathaniel Joseph. Got to have him. He's elite. A great player, obviously. Okay, now we go to Brandon Inniss. Okay. been given a 5-star, and now you're watching him and compare him, to what you just saw with Nathaniel Joseph. Remember, this is a 5-star prospect. You can see he's got good vertical. He can go up over the defense. Not that tall of a kid, but he gets up and
You should have put this as some Luther Campbell rap music.
well, I just figured we would talk over it. So, and then here's Ennis, I believe, a quarterback, because they moved him the quarterback when they had some injuries, and you could just see how good he is on his feet. Okay, but now, Matt, is that more impressive than Nathaniel Joseph? Not to me. Now look at Robbie Washington, who's a bigger athlete, and look how explosive Robbie Washington is. Now, to me, Robbie Washington is the most impressive of them all. I mean, look at how big and powerful and explosive this kid is. Okay, so what's the Miami coaching staff supposed to do? Okay, and that's before you get into Jaylen Brown, Hakeem Williams, Santana Fleming, Andy Jean. There are a lot of receiver prospects down here in South Florida this year, and if you're going to judge the coaching staff by who doesn't come, I think you're being, pretty darn unfair to the coaching staff, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, look, I got to tell you the truth. I'm not a highlights guy. If you watch, anybody can look good on highlights. I can put.
But you could see, especially, Robbie.
Yeah, fair, but are they playing,
Joseph?
Okay, you can talk over me if you want.
No, I'm just saying, if you got those two, Jaylen Brown and Andy Jean, it is the most amazing receiving class you could get.
I don't disagree, but I'm saying when you look at highlights, unless it's one of the kids against an American Heritage cornerback, I'm not all in on just watching highlights and saying, oh my God, look at this guy run by these slower defensive backs. That's just me. I like full game tape, or going to a game and watching a kid's demeanor and how he plays, and then watch them against top cornerbacks. You got to watch top receiver against top cornerback, and then you can say, wow, this guy's better than that guy, whatever it is. But so as it pertains to recruiting, because I'm not an evaluation guy, I don't go into the tape on the high school people.
Negative Nancy. Jesus, I'm trying to make a point here. The point is, I just showed 3 out of the 7, and they're all spectacular.
Yeah. Listen, my nephew has a tape of him dunking over player after player after player. He looks like the greatest Division I prospect ever. He's going D3 to my alma mater, okay? And for those of you that follow my history, I went to Tufts, okay? So he looks like a monster. He's playing at a top prep school in Massachusetts. I'm telling you. And he made it as a joke, just dunk after dunk after dunk, and offensive rebound, dunking over people. He's 6'10". But anyway, that's besides the point. So I'm just telling you, I don't do highlights. What I do know is I've seen these guys in camps. I've seen these guys, some 7-on-7 stuff. And 7-on-7, those are usually pretty good indications, because those are really good teams usually, So I think at the end of the day, if I had to go out on a limb and pick a recruiting class, I don't know if Lamar Seymour sticks. If everybody wants to come, if they have 4 of these other guys that maybe want in, I'm not sure that they take Lamar to business.
If they get 4 of these other guys, Lamar Seymour would be crazy to come.
It's tough to say no to that school. But anyway, and yeah, maybe he would say, I'm never going to play there. I'll go somewhere else. Maybe that's easier. But anyway, I think Nathaniel Joseph winds up at Miami. I think Jaylen Brown winds up at Miami. Robbie Washington's already committed. And listen, Robbie Washington, if they do get enough receivers, Robbie Washington thinks he's going to be a cornerback and a slot receiver / running back at Miami. He thinks he's playing both ways. And truth be told, Miami could just use him at cornerback. I mean, that's how good he is. He could be a great cornerback. He could be a great receiver. He could probably be a pretty darn good running back. So you can maybe put him at cornerback if you're landing enough of these receivers and try him out there. And then if it doesn't work out, you move him to receiver. You get rid of a couple of guys that aren't working out, Gary, just like you love to do. Bring in transfers, Gary. You love transfers, right? It'll be perfect.
Look at these kids. They're not going to need transfer receivers.
So, yeah. How many? Well, you said the same thing about Mark Pope and Lorenzo Lingard, right? Look how great they worked out for you. Anyway, and their highlight tape was awful, by the way. We should have known off their highlight tape, right, Gary? Lorenzo Lingard and Mark Pope had 2 of the worst highlight tapes. I'm being facetious for those of you out there who
you're making a good point there. I mean, there are kids with good highlight tapes in high school that don't make it in college.
Right. I think Andy Jean, if Miami continues to want him, he will be in the class. I don't think they get. I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to freak fans out. I don't think they get Brandon Innes. I don't
No,
think
not with all these other kids in the fold. There's no way.
I don't think they're getting Hakeem Williams. And they're really not recruiting Santana Fleming awfully hard right now. He'd be a guy where if some people fall off
There
the
won't
map.
be room for Santana if they get these other kids.
I understand, but this is a staff that likes to recruit everybody. So Santana's hearing from Miami, but just not at the level of some others. But listen, if you get a class of Nathaniel Joseph, Jalen Brown, and Robbie Washington, and then Andy Jean, maybe. I mean, what else do fans want, man? Like, that's pretty darn good. I'll take that all day.
Fans will be very happy with that. It's people that will say that they didn't keep all the local talent home, and I
don't think anyone else. I mean, look, I keep hearing like these South Florida Express kids for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on over there, but those kids they're national recruits. They think they're national recruits. They think it's for whatever reason the perception there is it's a bad thing to stay home. And Mario's trying to change that. But they need to change that because those South Florida Express kids and Innes is part of it. And like they need to somehow change the culture, not just at Miami, but at South Florida Express. I'm not quite sure why that is, other than the fact they go all over the country as a 7-on-7 team. They see everything. And I think a lot of these prospects in the past have sort of seen Miami falter. And I think the chatter has been from the older guys. I mean, you've got to remember, South Florida Express starts at age 14, age 13, whatever. They've been hearing from the older guys for years. Oh my, you can't stay home. This Miami team's garbage, da-da-da. And they weren't wrong, but they haven't heard the, wow, look at Miami now. Wow, they have Miami. This is why I keep saying Miami has to have a good season. This is why I'm willing to take it on the chin and say, okay, taking 10 transfers plus, it's not the end of the world because I need to win now because of these recruits. Like, that's the only reason. But I think that's the end of my thought process. I don't think I have anything else to say about that.
All right. So the bottom line is this, okay? You could get a good glimpse into Nathaniel Joseph and the process that he's going through. Clearly talented enough to make the cut to go to Miami. They want him very badly. Okay. You could take a look at, Robbie Washington's already committed. Andy Jean was committed. Still a chance he could come back. We think Jalen Brown's going to Miami. The bottom line is Miami should have a great recruiting class this year in terms of receivers. And so we thought.
I think across the board, it's going to be a great class. I can't imagine, unless the season goes south, which I don't expect. And by south, I mean they probably have to lose 5 games, okay? As long as they don't lose 5 games, and I can't see 5 games on the schedule they could even possibly lose. I mean, Texas A&M and Clemson, maybe. Pittsburgh, maybe. Maybe Virginia, but I don't see anybody else. There's nobody else on the schedule. They could 4 losses would be the worst case scenario to me. I can't imagine anything worse than that. So, how bad can it be? So I would imagine
don't jinx them, Matt. Don't jinx them. Don't jinx them.
Well, give me a break. Who else can they lose to? I mean, there's Georgia Tech's going to be terrible. Duke's going to be terrible. Georgia Tech will be below average.
We've seen this stuff go south.
Duke's going to be bad. North Carolina's not the same without Sam Howell. And they weren't even good last year with Sam Howell. So.
This will be the best coached Miami team in 2 decades.
Not going to be real good.
That we could say, and because they're going to be the best coached Miami team in 2 decades, they shouldn't have bad losses like they've had in the past. So we'll see what happens there. But anyway, so yeah, you get a good glimpse at this receiver situation on the website today through the eyes of Nathaniel Joseph and what we just showed you and talked about on this show, and figured quick glimpse at a couple of those kids. We're going to take a look at a couple of recruits that Miami is looking at this week. But before we do that, let's hear a word from our friends at Life Wallet.
I will be your shield in the fiercest battle. I'll defend you.
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Cleveland Reed, and I play offensive line, and my job is to protect. I protect my family with Life Wallet. How about you?
Of course, I got Life Wallet. It's the best way to protect my family.
Long as we go together, we'll die whenever. Be a light, couldn't let the darkness try you ever. Truth in my word, you I lie to never.
To protect you and your family, get Life Wallet now.
Life Wallet. Saving time, saving lives.
All right, a couple other recruiting stories on the website today. Miami Pace 2024 linebacker Vincent Shavers being recruited by Miami. A look ahead at that. The coaching staff is all over the country right now. seeing, watching, they're really evaluation visits. You're not really allowed to visit with the kids. Every now and then there's a bump or something that you got to, justify, obviously, so you don't get written up as violating NCAA rules. The infamous spring bumps obviously take place out there. But, right now the coaches are traveling all over the country doing evals and building relationships with coaches, and we'll continue to have updates on that. There's a story on the website about Orlando Boone wide receiver Aiden Mizell, for example, who also picked up a Miami offer recently. So we'll be hitting you with these constantly here over the next few weeks.
And there's gonna be there was numerous offers yesterday. There's numerous offers going to go out every day. I think
every day,
2 weeks. And it's interesting. Like, we're talking about the receivers and the local receivers. That has not stopped Miami from offering several receivers from other places, including this 4-star Aiden Mizell. It doesn't mean they're not getting the Miami prospects or the South Florida prospects, but this is just a sign of a staff that understands you can't just assume, like past staffs have assumed, and you get screwed in the end. They're going to recruit guys that can help Miami, and they'll keep recruiting them until they get enough guys that say, hey, I'm locked in with you, I'm done, that they wanted as their top tier. You could have 7 to 10 guys in your top tier where you think they're all going to be amazing. You obviously can't take all 7 to 10, but the first 3 or 4 out of the top tier that come in, you're like, we're good,
Yeah.
So they're not at the point yet. They're still searching.
And I think the other thing that's going on here is they're not real happy with the receiver position.
I disagree with that.
Right now. No, I don't think they are. I don't think they are, Matt. I think that there's a lot of those guys.
I think saying not happy is not the correct term. Maybe they feel they're not living up to their potential, but to say they're not happy with the receiving core, I think is overstated.
I think if they get all these kids in recruiting, that a lot of these guys that are currently on the team will end up in the transfer portal a year from now. That's just my prediction.
Well, okay. I think Jacoby George is perfectly fine. I think Keyshawn Smith is a perfectly fine compliment. Really good player. Frank Ladson, if he puts it all together, I mean, you look at the guy, he should be amazing. I don't understand why he wasn't better in the spring, but he has the potential to be amazing. And then you have Xavier Restrepo, who I think is, poised to have a breakout season along with George. I agree with you. The depth is not great. You hope a guy like whoever, a Mike Redding, or I don't have the depth chart in front of me, but there are some guys who maybe could be better that, just right now don't really look the part. So I understand that. But when you got 4,
let me ask you, who stood out in spring practice?
The cornerbacks were amazing.
Who stood out at receiver in spring practice?
All the receivers were amazing. It's just all the cornerbacks are all ACC first team. So, of course, the receivers couldn't get open. I mean, what do you expect?
Who stood out at receiver in spring practice?
Nobody.
One guy.
I wouldn't even say Restrepo did, honestly. He was okay. He's so good and he gives so much effort, but it wasn't like the guy was, just motoring by defensive backs. He was fine, but he could be better. I mean, they all could be better. That's the point. That's why I'm not saying they're not good. I'm saying they haven't lived up to their potential, because I think they have a ton of potential. Like Jacoby George, if he puts it all together, man, he's going to be that go-to number 1 guy you keep saying you want. Same thing with Frank Ladson. They just have to get it. They have to understand. And I think they were a step slow. Just they're learning an offense. This is not a simple offense. And the offensive coordinator is the receivers coach. And when you watch him in practice, he's on them about such little details that it's a mental thing. Like you saw Mark Pope never understood it. Josh Gaddis is going to teach it to the point that they get it, but they were slow in the spring because he was teaching so much stuff. When the fall comes around, Gary, if in the first week or 2 of fall drills, we're seeing the same thing, then I agree with you. But I think it's going to be totally different. I think these receivers are going to be so much more up to speed on the offense, know where they're going. It was almost like the defense knew where the receivers were going before they did, because the receivers weren't running their full gamut. Is that a good word? Full gamut of plays. Like they were just running 5 and 10 yard outs and, just basic routes. There wasn't a lot of downfield plays that they were even running, right? Because they were just putting in the basics. So I'm not worried about it, man. They're off the charts athletically, physically. I am not concerned about the receivers. I know you are, but I'm not.
I'm real concerned.
And you're wrong. Wrong.
And
That's my favorite word. Everyone should say that word. Everyone should say that word a lot today.
They might take 5, or you might see them take 5 receivers in recruiting this year.
I think 4, but but how much fun is it to say the word wrong, Gary? Right? Isn't it nice to tell people they're wrong? It makes you feel better about yourself. Like if you're wrong, that means I'm by default right, which just is it's an ego booster, man. Like John Ruiz is always right. I'm feeling like John Ruiz right now talking to you, man.
Oh,
You have nothing to say? Nothing to say? That's it?
I'll let that one go.
You're not going to tell me I'm wrong?
No,
it's
I'm
very
not.
nice to say that we're wrong.
All right, well, that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. For Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Furman. We thank you for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.